Today we're going to take a look again at our To-Do app, looking into data persistence. So we're going to use a very known package called Share Preferences. This package is available on pub.dartlang.org. It is one of the most popular packages. As you can see, it's on the main area here. We're going to follow the instructions. To install, we're just going to copy paste our dependencies here into our YAML file. I already have our pub/spec YAML file here, and I'm just going to paste it in, run our packages get, should be now installed, and go back to our main here. Now we are going to do a few things here, but before I start coding, I'm going to explain what we'll do. So because we want to be able to record our information, and share preferences, as we will be able to see, allows us to save into a phone, either iOS or Android, and it uses shared preferences on Android and the NS user defaults on iOS. We could record strings, integers. What we're going to use is a set of strings, which is most useful for us, because essentially what a to-do is a string, and a list of to-dos is essentially a set of strings. But we do have a string for a title and a complete for a boolean. So the best way to save this will be to use JSON. So the best thing we could do is convert our object into a map, which is a hash in other languages dictionary in iOS, Objective-C for example, and from that map convert it into JSON and save that as our string. And then when we want to retrieve the data, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to take our set of strings, we're going to convert them from the JSON format into the map, and then we're going to reuse the map to create the object and repopulate our list. So let's do exactly that. First thing I'll do is move our class from here, as it was never a good place to have it, and we're going to create a new file, and we're going to to-do.dart. I'm not bothering with having a new directory here because we're keeping this very simple. I'm going to paste it in, save it, make sure I import it because we don't have it right now. So come here, click, use the helper, import. We've got it up here. Create a new constructor for our to-do class, which we'll be calling from map. It will expect that we give it a map, and I'm going to use this shorthand here, would allow us to very easily assign properties of our class. In this case, we're going to title, and it's going to be equal to the title property of our map. And we're going to do the same for the complete, and just a little bit of copy paste. There we go. And we're also going to need a method in our class which will output a map, and we'll say to map. That's pretty straightforward. We'll return once again a map, and it will have a property called title, which will give us our title. Go, and let's just copy paste a little bit again, and here we go. So this will allow us to easily convert a map into our to-do object and convert our to-do object into a map, which will enable us to easily convert a JSON string into a map and then into an object, and vice versa. Use our object and convert it into a map and then into a JSON string that we can easily store into the shared preferences set string. Let's go back to our main. Alright, so we've removed our class from down here, and now we're going to start using shared preferences. To do that, we are going to instantiate it here. So shared preferences, we'll create a shared preferences variable, and we will just instantiate it here. Let's check what's going on here. This is because I haven't imported our shared preferences package, so let's do exactly that. Shared preferences, here we go, we no longer have an error. And now what I'm doing here is, instead of instantiating it here, which I can't do because if we look at the documentation on shared preferences, we can see that it starts with an await, because this is essentially going to the device regardless of being iOS or Android, and it needs to wait for the device to return us the access of its own specific operative system. So we're going to have to do the same. We could copy paste here and this will be useful, but because I want to reuse the shared preferences in multiple places, I won't do exactly what they've done here, obviously, and this is a different example. So I'm going to create an initializer for our shared preferences. So I'm going to do init shared preferences, which will be called here in our init state. And I'm going to put this method down here, which will do what we did before, which saying shared preferences equals shared preferences dot get instance, and we are missing two things. One is an await, and then we'll need an async. Alright, now that we have our shared preferences initialized, we're going to create a method to save our data. Let's come down here to our data management area, as I call it, and let's create a method called save data. We don't need to pass anything to it because we're just going to access the state. Let's initialize here a list of strings which we will call splist, short for shared preferences list. And what it will have is we're going to map our list of to-dos. As we know where this is. This is our list of to-dos from our previous videos, and we're going to map it here. Each item will say that we want that item converted into a map, the method we had before. So obviously we can do this. We need to JSON encode this. Now, to use JSON encode, we have to have imported the Dart convert. Amongst other things, this is what makes the JSON and encoding and decoding available to us. So we have an splist. This should be a list of strings. We have one problem here because map, what actually a map outputs, is not a list, it's an iterable. And to make sure this goes into a list, we actually just add this method at the end to list. And now let's see if this works, and to do that, let's just actually print our splist and add it here on our to-do. Let's clear this up and let's say save data. Okay, so I'm gonna clean these up. I'm going to add here some new to-do. Let's see what happens. Oh, here we go. So our save data method is converting everything into a list. Let's do it again so we can actually see that it is indeed a list. It is indeed a list with string in a JSON format, and we've got two items here. Alright, cool. We have them converted, but we're not saving them yet, so let's do that now. So what we'll do is we're going to access our shared preferences, which are instantiated already, and we're going to say set string list. We need a key, and we're going to call it just list because we don't need more than that, and we're just going to pass splist. Splist is supposed to be a list of strings. That's what it is. If we do this, we can see that it expects a list of strings, and that's exactly what we're doing. So this should be saving now, but to make sure, we need to read from it. So let's do that. Let's create a method to read the data. Load data. Oopsie daisy. Oh, there we go. So now we have to do the opposite of what we've done before, which is access our shared preferences, check if our list is there. So let's do just that. Shared preferences, get string list, and we want to get our list as we've done before. Obviously we need to put this into a variable, so let's do the same as before. Let's do list string splist. This is in the wrong spot. Okay, and now we are going to go through this list. Sorry, let's actually put our list of to-dos is equal to this splist. We're going to do a map again because that's really convenient. Once again, we'll go through the items, and now we have to do the opposite of what we've done here. So what we need to do is we're going to make use of the from map constructor we created here, and we want to build a to-do from a map, but we need to JSON decode our item. So this should now go through our list, decode every item into a map, and then create a new to-do object from a map and put them all into a list. Once again, we need to do two lists to make sure our iterable is converted into a list. Let's save this. So now that we have our list being built and being added to our state, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we'll need to set state, because we are adding all the data to this list, but we are not actually telling it to re-render. So I don't need to wrap the whole thing. I could wrap this whole thing into set state, but if we call it here at the end, it will do exactly the same effect, but it will be a little bit cleaner. Now, we're not calling this load data method anywhere, so we need to do that. Let's go up here to our init preferences, and after the await, so we need to make sure that our shared preferences are available, let's call in the load data. So it'll only be called once, and it is once we load the app for the first time, once it hot restarted or restarted from scratch, and that's the only time we're ever going to need to call it, because after that, after loading the data initially, we're just going to manipulate it internally and keep saving to the list as we need to. So let's do exactly that. We have our saved data there on add to do, but to make sure this list is up to date always, we're going to repeat that same call on every one of our methods here. So let's actually try this now and see if I haven't made any mistakes. Save this here. We've got no errors. I'm going to add just one more. And now let's do a full hot restart. Oh, and the data is there. Actually, to do a full test of this, I'm going to fully terminate our process and start it again, which will force the whole app to be recopied into the phone. But instead of having just latest changes that were inside the app, which is what we had before, essentially when you're working on development mode, which is what we're doing right now, using hot restarts, hot reloads, we are making changes to the app. They are running, we can see them working, but the reality is that they're not in the full-in build. If we want to have that and be able to fully close the app on the phone, which essentially will kill if we do this, it will kill the process. As we can see, application finished here. So if we restarted that, it wouldn't have all the latest changes we've done with just hot restarts and hot reloads. So that's why I've fully closed it, and now we can actually test it and make sure that it's not doing anything directly with our code here. It's running it on its own. I believe this is the correct one. Okay, we're going to delete something here. We're going to add a new message and delete this one and add some emoticons here. Save it. Let's fully close the app and let's open it again, and our data is here. We can edit it. We can as well, let's do that just to make sure. 2, 3, 4, and once again let's close it fully. Actually, let's close everything I might have here from other experiments, and let's open it here, and there we go. Our data is here. Cool. So that is it for shared preferences. As you saw, it wasn't really that complex. We made sure we had a constructor and a method on our class to convert our data into a map and from a map, so that we can then encode it into JSON, which makes it a lot easier to save it as a set of strings or a list of strings in our shared preferences, which is what we're doing right here. And every time our app is started, we just load our data once. So we go into our init state, and here we'll call initiate preferences. It needs to be asynchronous because it needs to wait for the device to give us access to the information. And once we have access to that information, we do a load data. Our load data goes through our set of strings, through our list of strings, maps it, goes through every item, decodes it, from JSON into an actual map, which is the output of the JSON decode, and then we create our object from our map. As we saw here, we just assign the title to what's coming from the map, the complete what's coming from the map, and it goes into our list. Once that's done, we do a set state to make sure our view refreshes or re-renders in this case, and it's visible to us. From that moment on, every time we make a change, from setting the complete list, removing, adding a new to-do, or editing it, we keep saving the data once again, go through it, sort of as you do with state management. You just save the whole thing again. We don't make changes directly, we just save it on top of it, make sure our data is up to date, and then if we just restart the app as we've done now a couple of times, we will see that our data is saved there regardless of the changes we've made. So I hope that was clear enough, and thank you for watching.